Obviously, the most important thing is Mug Club because it's what allows us to continue. But that is a good question. And as far as I know right now, do we have Senator? We do have Senator Ted. Senator Ted, his podcast, I should say, in case you guys need some other information on it. Yeah. People are like, who? If I say his podcast is Verdict, where you can download wherever podcasts are. People go, oh, Senator Ted Cruz.
Of course.
No, they already know it's Senator Ted Cruz, the Cruiserine, the Wolver Cruz. This guy, I will say, has absolutely been on this like a dog on a bone, and I highly recommend that you do pay attention to his podcast. Yeah. Senator Ted Cruz, can you hear me, sir?
I can, Stephen. Good to be with you.
I am glad to have you on the show as well. Something just remarkable just happened live while we were broadcasting. CNN was saying there's no evidence whatsoever of any kind of voter fraud or irregularities. I think the two have been conflated. And, of course, the Georgia Secretary of State just said they're going to do a manual recount. That was not aired on CNN at any point. This is really concerning to us. We've obviously been covering it. What is the path here? What is the strategy with specific Senator Ted Cruz? Because something needs to happen quickly for Americans to not lose faith.
Yeah, look, you're exactly right. I'm sure the CNN story was amplifying the New York Times headline today, banner headline that no voter fraud anywhere in America. And the basis for this is they called all the election officials, which in these blue states, many of them are hard partisan Democrats, and said, hey, did you guys steal the election? And they responded, no, we didn't steal the election.
This is a legal process. Don't get too wonky for us, Senator Cruz.
It's a little bizarre. It's like, we called all the bank robbers and they promised us there are no bank robberies in America.
Right.
If there is fraud and you're asking the people who are running it, they're going to tell you there's not. This is not subtle reporting. But you know what? The New York Times knows that. They want to write that headline.
Well, let me ask you this, because they keep saying there's no evidence of fraud. And I think we understand there's a difference between fraud and irregularities. So coming up to the election, we document this. We had a tallying. We had kind of a total tally.
Brand will fix.
Right. Yes. Well, wait, what was that? I didn't hear what you said. Who will fix?
The latter, irregularities.
Yes.
Regular brand will fix.
Oh, and I stepped on your joke, and it was a poop joke, which is wonderful.
Oh, man.
Don't even.
I know my host.
Yes, absolutely. It's a crappy show, but we love having you on. So they say no, because we were always very clear there were up to 2.7 million ballots that we said could be compromised. And we said there's a difference between ineptitude, the post office not being effective enough to get these votes in time, as well as voter rolls that weren't accurate, as well as people who maybe received double registrations. We were very clear in saying that. The media just keeps saying no hard evidence of voter fraud. So let me ask you this. Specifically, what evidence is there either of irregularities? We've covered quite a few here, right? How many ballots could have been accepted beyond the actual election date? Something that's really suspicious, of course, is that mail-in ballots have been accepted at a rate of 30 times what they were accepted in 2016. Allegheny County, their Board of Elections, they just said they had to count over 2,000 undated ballots. We personally on this show went through voter rolls in Michigan, Senator Cruz, and we found obituaries of the people who voted. Now, I can't say that there are many thousands because I don't have the research crew, but we confirmed dozens. What hard evidence is there of either irregularities or voter fraud? What do you plan to take into battle?
Well, Stephen, I'll tell you what evidence matters, and that is the evidence presented by the legal teams in court in the formal challenge. And here's how this operates. We had the election 8 days ago. Mm-hmm. After the election, there have been multiple lawsuits filed across the country in multiple states challenging the results, either calling for recounts, mandatory recounts, or contest litigation, other cases challenging the results. It's now incumbent on the Trump legal team to go and present their evidence, not on Twitter, not on YouTube or on TV, but to present it in a court of law. That means coming in with expert witnesses, coming in with statistical analysis, coming in with direct witnesses who can testify as to specific fraud, and to quantify the case. And the way our legal system works, look, I got to say, it is hard and frustrating just as an informed citizen to know really what's going on. You watch Twitter, you see allegations all over the place. Right. It's not clear, is it zombies rising from the dead all voting? What's going on?
Right.
What matters is what they can prove in court. And the process we have to determine what the evidence is the legal adjudicatory function. And so there'll be cases in state court and federal court where the fact finders, either the jury or the judge, will listen to the evidence and conclude what the facts demonstrate. And then from there, if the Trump campaign is able to demonstrate that a sufficient number of votes were illegally cast, such that they should not be included, they may be able to flip some or all of the vote totals. But that's what it will take to change the result from where the tallies are right now.
Where would you say Americans should look? What's the strongest point?
So, Stephen, the strongest point I would say is start at the beginning, which is wait and let the process play out. The legal process, these results are still being contested in court. And I'll give an example. So the media has now called it for Joe Biden. They want everyone to shut up, and they say if you dare disagree with their call, that you're somehow undermining democracy. Well, that's not actually the way our Constitution works. It's not the media that picks the president. It's the American people. It's the voters. And let me point to a very specific example, which is in the year 2000, Bush versus Gore. The media on election night called the election for Al Gore. I was working on the George W. Bush campaign. That's where I met Heidi, my wife. I remember that night. They said, Gore has won Florida. Al Gore is the next president of the United States. All sorts of red, white, and blue. Ta-da, the media makes the call. They just had one problem. The votes weren't there. As they counted the votes, George W. Bush had more votes in Florida than Al Gore. Now, they ended up retracting their call because they realized it was catastrophically wrong. And by the way, every network was catastrophically wrong.
And one thing, too, to be clear about that, a lot of Americans, because Kevin Costner made a movie on HBO, they don't know that there were recounts that went on, and then it just eventually had to halt it. Was it 37 days?
So it was 36 days, and there were a total of 4 recounts that happened in Florida. So the Al Gore team came in. Every time the votes were counted, George W. Bush won every single recount. I was part of the legal team, and you and I have talked before on your show about my new book, One Vote Away.
Yes, One Vote Away.
There's an entire chapter on One Vote Away on Bush versus Gore. So if you want to understand really what happens in a recount, what are the legal issues, how does this happen? If you want to understand what's going on right now, go to Amazon and buy One Vote Away. It's actually been 5 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, which, as you know, drives them back.
Yeah, they really don't want you to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Like, Chelsea Handler, can you write another book about drinking and sleeping with a lot of people? Please, whatever it takes to bump him off. Hardcover, softcover, nonfiction, digital. Give me something. Let me ask you this, because the difference between Florida and this, obviously, is there's one state, Florida. Now there are many, and really, Florida comes down to too close to call, right? That's what it was. That's why we needed the recount. Nowhere near the kind of widespread irregularities, and I'm using my words carefully here. I would say there's some indications of outright misleading voting practices that you could see in some precincts, but voting irregularities, there wasn't this in Florida. So now that we're looking at a multi-pronged approach, what should the rollout plan be? Does there need to be a priority on one specific state? Is maybe Georgia the right place to try and put all hands on deck since the Secretary of State is starting now? He started the process with a manual recount.
Look, Georgia is a hugely important fight, not just for the presidential, but we've got runoff. 2 Senate seats, a runoff on January 5th, that is going to decide control of the Senate. And so those Senate elections, it is hard to think of such an epically important election as this January 5th election, because the difference between a Chuck Schumer Senate that will unleash the crazies on the far left versus a Republican Senate that will shut down the most damaging ideas of the far left, it's dramatic.
Yeah.
But set aside Georgia for a second. Let me take your broader question. Where we are right now, let me give you good news and bad news. The good news is one reason to have.
Wait, hold on a second. You didn't ask me if I want the good news first or the bad news first. My doctor usually does that. He says, you want the good news first or the bad news first? Then he tells me about my cholesterol and how I have a fat ass, and that's the good news. So
I'll give you bean first, and then I'll amputate.
Okay, all right, good.
The good news.
Okay.
If you look at in this COVID strange election cycle, the ballots cast in person on election day, Trump won the significant majority of those ballots.
Right.
The early ballots cast by mail, Biden won the significant majority of those.
Sure.
If you look historically at election recounts or election contests, In-person ballots tend to be pretty reliable. There's less opportunity for mischief with in-person voting. So typically, the votes count on election day stand. Mm-hmm. Where you see in recounts and contests votes being discarded as being illegal, as contrary to law,
right,
are usually early votes and mail-in votes, which means there's some reason to expect, as these ballots are examined more closely, that some meaningful percentage of the early mail-in votes will be discarded as contrary to law, which means more Biden votes are likely to go away than Trump votes. So that's good news that we could see these totals shrinking.
Right.
The bad news you referred to is twofold. Number one, some of these margins are pretty big. Mm-hmm. In Pennsylvania, it's 45,000 votes. Look, Bush versus Gore in Florida, we had a couple thousand votes. Right. 45,000 is a lot of votes. In Michigan, it's 130,000 votes is Biden's lead.
Right.
Those are big vote totals. Because to prevail, you've got to demonstrate in the court that many ballots are illegally cast, and you can't just make generalities. It has to be specifically proven up. Here's also what makes it challenging. To win, to flip the outcome, the Trump legal team has to run the table. They can't just win in one state. They can't just win in Pennsylvania. They can't just win in Georgia. They've got to win in multiple states. And so that becomes harder because Biden has a lead in several of these states, from Georgia to Arizona to Michigan to Pennsylvania to Nevada. And to get to 270 electoral votes, Trump has to win not just once, and winning once is not easy, but he's got to win multiple times.
Right.
And so my advice to everyone is just calm down and relax and let the process play out. That doesn't mean pop the champagne and celebrate that Trump's going to win. We need to let the process play out and see what happens. But don't also accept what the media is saying, which is don't even bother with the litigation. We say it's over, so you must think it's over.
Watch Good Morning Mug Club live every Monday through Thursday at 10:15 Eastern.